for with the lowdown on Lower Decks, and I am joined once again by my partner in crime, Mr. Chris Babone. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, Josh. Buenas tardes a todos nuestros oyentes. Guten Tag. Buongiorno. It is nice to have you back.
Yes, it's good to be back, my friend. As you can all see, we're not broadcasting from my apartment as usual. I am here at the Whiskey Jar in downtown Charlottesville for the Virginia Film Festival going on this weekend here in Charlottesville.
That sounds exciting.
Yes, so far it has been. So Brandon, our producer's been here doing a lot of interviews. So I came on down here and to join him, and so we are now. We've been, watching a lot of big name directors and writers coming by, and just taking in the sights. And it's also Halloween weekend here on the downtown mall, so a lot of people are coming up and dressed in costumes. It's like Mardi Gras down here right now, really.
Well, I am wearing orange myself to in honor of Halloween.
Yes. Well, I'm wearing basic black, so but I usually wear basic black. Every day's Halloween for me.
That works
Uh,
great.
so we just had a brand new episode this week of our favorite show, Lower Decks, and this one was called The Inner Flight, a title that Mike McManus and the team at Lower Decks worked really hard to kind of keep under wraps until just when the episode aired. Makes me sort of think about the TNG episode, The Inner Light. What did you think, Chris?
I mean, it definitely made me think of the inner light, but also it made me think more so of First Duty.
Yes, and we will explain why that is very shortly when we get into our recap of this week's episode. So, on that note, let's hit it. Okay, so the episode opens with our regular team. Uh, they are on a planet helping a group of research scientists get set up when suddenly the force field that is protecting the scientists' compound breaks down and a horde of very poisonous lizards starts to invade. Um, and because they're having trouble beaming out, Mariner decides to run out, distract the lizards, and try to get the force field up and running again manually, which she succeeds in doing without managing to get herself poisoned. But it is beginning to bring to notice her more recent daredevil attitude and why she seems to be trying to put herself more in danger. But unfortunately, her mom, Captain Freeman, can't really do anything about it because Starfleet has just gotten new intelligence about the ship that has been abducting other spaceships from around the quadrant, has now started targeting Federation ships and seems to be going after former Starfleet officers. So the Cerritos is tasked with finding one such former Starfleet officer. Chris, you want to pick it up from there?
Yes, they're tasked with finding Nick Locarno, who some of you may remember from Star Trek Next Generation. He's the one that has the ill-advised idea in Starfleet Academy to do a forbidden maneuver which causes the death of some cadets and ultimately gets him drummed out of Starfleet, and Wesley takes a hit and gets a demotion. And so they are off to find Nick Locarno while she asks the lower deckers to take Mariner on what seemingly is a much easier and safer mission. And so we have two sides of the episode: what is happening with Captain Freeman and what is happening with the lower deckers. And so they go to repair a very simple common weather buoy that monitors a planet that has some electrical storms. And Mariner, of course, is like upset that this is not dangerous at all. But when they're leaving, they get ambushed by a Klingon bird of prey. And so they are outgunned despite their maneuvers to try to escape, and they beam out to the planet just as the Klingon bird of prey blows up the shuttle. And so the question is, what is a bird of prey doing there? And as they are going through the planet, they see some faces that to us as viewers are familiar, some Romulans, some Ferengi that are engaged fighting seemingly with one another, but then it turns out that they were trying to lure in a Klingon. And then Mariner intervenes, butts up the fight, and her herself gets her rear kicked by the Klingon, because if you're going to pick a fight, folks, don't pick it with the Klingon. And the rest of the lower deckers, drag her away to safety. And so it appears that we are in some type of battle world, for lack of a better word. And so they are dragged. They have downloaded the telemetry from the weather satellite, so they have an advantage over everyone else, so that they know the terrain. And so they go to a alcove within a tree, and T'Len figures out that they can send a beacon, a distress signal from the tower that transmits to the weather satellite. And Mariner's like, let's go now. And they're like, no, let's wait until tomorrow. And they actually tell her then, listen, your mom's really worried. We're all really worried. Like, why are you trying to basically kill yourself? And so she grudgingly agrees not to go until the next morning. And Josh, do you want to explain what happens when she knowingly does the exact opposite of what she told her friends?
Okay, so Mariner gets into a fight with the Klingon again, and as they're going at it, because the atmosphere of this planet tends to rain shards of glass, she and the Klingon have to seek shelter in a cave. And Mariner wants to keep fighting, but the Klingon says, no, this cave's too small for us to fight in. We shall have to wait. And with nowhere else to run, the Klingon starts asking her questions why she seems so desperate to fight, and points out that there's really no need. It's just, it's more him testing her mantle, but she seems to really want it. And finally, she breaks down and admits that she has been haunted for a long time by the death of her friend, who is, it turned out, was Ensign Sojara, who was a Bajoran from the episode Lower Decks from Star Trek: The Next Generation. She was a Bajoran who was serving aboard the Enterprise and was assigned to an undercover mission, which she never returned. And apparently, Mariner has been haunted by this. And then, not long after that, there was the Dominion War that she fought in, and apparently Mariner has been dealing with a lot of personal trauma over the years, which is why she keeps getting promoted, then getting sort of demoted, because it's hard for her to bear this responsibility, because she thinks about her friend a lot and how her friend should be there. And the Klingon points out to her that she needs to honor her friend, because her friend gave her life so that Mariner could be a researcher, could study things like plants and rocks and things. Ultimately, she agrees, and the storm ends. And the Klingon says, well, we can resume our fight. But then Mariner says, no, we need to get everybody off the planet. So they go find everybody at the tower, and Mariner gives this riveting speech on everybody getting together and working together to pull their resources. And suddenly she is beamed away. Meanwhile, back on the smuggler planet, Captain Freeman and crew are still trying to find information about Carino, but nobody's cooperating. And ultimately, the information is sold to a bounty hunter. But it turns out the bounty hunter is actually Lieutenant Commander Billups from engineering, because Freeman knew that nobody on that planet was going to just sell Starfleet the information, that they were going to constantly work against them. So she, once again, like she did with Nog, she, pulled a ringer and they get the information. Meanwhile, back on the planet, our friends are able to get the bird prey lured down close enough so that they are able to jump on the hull, open up an escape hatch, climb in, and then the Klingon kills the commander of the bird of prey and thereby takes command of the ship, and they're all rescued. And Mariner wakes up and finds herself aboard the ship that's been kidnapping everybody, and it turns out it is under the command of her old friend Nicholas Carino, of course, who was also voiced by Robert Duncan McNeil. And for those of you who don't remember, Carino was this guy from the episode First Duty, in which a number of Starfleet cadets tried an elaborate stunt that resulted in the death of a fellow cadet and nearly got Wesley Crusher kicked out of Starfleet. So that's more or less where we ended, Chris. So what did you think of the episode?
Well, it advanced the plot in a way that last week's did not, and it's really setting up this. It's really setting up the season finale, and I think all the elements are in place to show that it seems Nick may be trying to somehow start up a little bit of a war among members of the Federation. So very intrigued to see what Mariner's part was going to be, and we'll talk about this more a little later, but I'm glad we finally got to see what has been driving Mariner for so long to basically not want a position of command.
Sorry. I like the fact that we finally got a look into Mariner's psyche. I mean, that's something we've been worried about trying to figure out for a long time because, we've been wondering for the last few years, okay, why is it that this obviously super intelligent, super brave, super skilled young ensign, seems to enjoy getting herself into trouble and getting herself demoted when she ought to be commanding her own starship by now. And it seems to be that she's just been self-sabotaging herself because, she just feels this intense pain and frustration, and she doesn't know what to do about it. And one of the things I think we've got is that I've wondered, well, why is it that no one sent her to counseling? And I was talking with a friend about this, and they thought, well, Mariner's so smart, she just evaded the questions anyway. And finally, being stuck in a cave with a Klingon psychiatrist, she had nowhere left to run. So she was forced to face what's been bothering her all these years. And, like a lot of people who, clearly, getting the, I don't think I realized this, but apparently Mariner is a veteran of the Dominion War. So, and that's obviously some trouble she's never dealt with.
So I'm just going to slightly disagree with what you said, only in the fact that that Mariner could hide like the questions. It's also part, I think, when you have some commanders that they don't want to deal with problem elements. So for them, or problem employees. So for them, it's easier rather than try to figure out what's happening here to like demote them, let them go, transfer them. And so I think this actually says a lot about Ransom. That Ransom was like, no, I'm going to see this through. Like I am going to support you no matter what crap you pull off, and I'm going to see what happens when you have like someone who actually has your back all the time. So I think it's a combination of perhaps she can fake it, but also it's having finally found someone who's like, no, I'm going to give you a nurtured environment to see how well you can succeed. So I think this says a lot about the Ransom character.
Yeah, I think that there's been a lot, definitely Ransom is evolved a lot since the first episode. And just when I was sort of thinking about it, I got to thinking about Barclay and how it was that for so long he was just transferred from ship to ship because nobody knew what to do with him. It wasn't that he just seemed like so skittish. And then finally, Picard ordered Deanna and Geordi to work with him to finally help him kind of get out of whatever it was that was bothering him. And he did finally become this brilliant Starfleet officer. He finally found what he was supposed to be doing. And I think, it could have been that, you just needed the right circumstances. And it's going to be interesting what Mariner does moving forward, I hope that her character doesn't radically change from the person we've come to know all these past 4 seasons. But hopefully, she's going to, get on sort of the path that she find her destiny, I guess, is for lack of a better term.
Well, since we seem to be transitioning into now the good of the episode, which again is like finally finding out what's been bugging Mariner. I like that finally we get T'Lyn back, and I also like the fact that we get a reference to one of the episodes from earlier in the season when it seems the Ryans are just going to bar shish kebab Mariner, and Tilly just pops out of nowhere, and she says stop, and they're like, "Oh, mistress of the winter constellations," and she's like, if you harm this woman, that's like an attack on my house, and they're like, "Oh no, oh no." So I like to see that some of the buildup from the season that we may not have thought was going to come back actually did come back. So that was really interesting. And I also like Mariner saying, "Well, clearly we've seen T'Lyn can throw down." So it's some reference to that, even though we have not seen T'Lyn in the last 3 episodes, but she is still a force among the low deckers.
Yeah, she's definitely that. I also liked how Tendi handled the Orions a lot. That was really good. And it was nice to see T'Lyn back in there because we hadn't had her for a couple of episodes, and I think they did just a remarkable job with the writing of this week's episode. I don't really have any complaints about it. I mean, what did you have any bads or anything?
I didn't like how they made Captain Freeman sort of look like very incompetent, but then it all came together. So, I mean, that really made sense. I think that I liked it, but I'm not quite understanding what's the purpose of putting everyone on that planet to basically fight with one another. But I think we just got to watch the season finale to understand what Nick's machinations have been all around, which I suspect it's to start a war, but I'm not entirely sure. And one thing I did like is I did like the fact that the bar they go to in that outpost was called Muds, and clearly the Klingon who bartends or owns the establishment is supposed to be an homage to Harry Mudd.
Yeah, I noticed that too. So, yeah,
and we got a female Gorn. It's always a good episode when you see a female Gorn.
Yes, we don't get to see many of those very often. Speaking of the Gorn, what else did you? Any other things you noticed that really should be highlighted? I think for me it was the mental health aspect of Mariner. That we're taking that a lot more seriously.
I mean, I like that. I liked the fact that we finally visit a world where it's not part of the Federation, and they don't think all the worlds we go to seem to hold the Federation in a huge respect, or their Federation world. I like the fact that we're seeing more outposts, more worlds of no, we don't care about the Federation here. You're doing your thing, we're gonna do our thing. This is still wild space. I like that we got to see a place where it was not reverential of the Federation.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Getting to see that. I mean, it's kind of feels like Star Wars, but yeah, it is kind of cool that we don't always get to see all these planets that. Okay, we're more libertarian. We don't really want to. We're not part of your stupid Federation or anything. But I thought it's okay. Obviously there's some people that don't have the warm, fuzzy feelings towards Starfleet, the Federation, that the rest of us have.
I will say this, that it was a little bit more difficult, but again, it's really easy to capture the bridge of a ship. Apparently, it's not just a Federation flaw. Apparently, it's a Klingon flaw too.
Yeah, I think that's a constant thing. That does seem to be the most vulnerable part. You think you just lock the door or something, but apparently, there's a lot of ways you could just get in there. Um, I was just going to say that one of the things I really liked was Mariner's speech to everybody else that, hey, we don't have to like each other, but we have a common cause. We need to work together to stop this. And I think at its core, Star Trek is always best when it emphasizes that. And I think that these days it's always good to hear something like that, given what's going on in the world. Is hey, we all have to work together to fix this problem because it's facing all of us. So, um, and I thought that was really riveting. And, you know, Tawny Newsom's such a great actress, and she really delivered those lines so well. And even though, yeah, we think of Mariner as kind of Lower Decks in general as being a comedy, it's still Star Trek at its heart. It still has the best parts of Star Trek in it. So I really appreciated that.
So, what do we have aside from a female Gorn as a Gorn of this episode? I mean, I would say for me, it seems that Nick is trying to incite a war as a way to get back to the Federation for having kicked him out when he was a cadet. I think he's trying to steer things up, and I'm not sure. The question is, what has he done with the ships? I mean, we know what he did with the people on the ships. He dropped them on that planet, maybe with the hope they would die. But what does he want with the ships themselves? Because he doesn't destroy them. Like, he basically tractor beams them someplace. And so I'm thinking he's going to fake an incident among all the different members of the Federation.
Yeah, and why does he think Mariner wants to help him? I don't think Mariner wants to help him at all. I think she wants to stop him at all costs. Because she's not going to let him just destroy the Federation because he's having a temper tantrum that, oh, I was so brilliant, but I get kicked out of Starfleet,
I think he may be banking Joss on the fact that she wants payback for what happened to Sito, and which prior to her heart to heart with the Klingon, two hearts, one might say, like maybe she would have gone for that. But now that she's like found some balance, I agree with you. I don't think she's going to want to do this, but he doesn't know that. And I guess the question is, would everyone else in the Federation, aside from Ransom, believe her if she gets caught up in his mess, given her past history? If she says, no, I was not a part of this. I didn't want to be a part of this.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I think she's built up though enough credibility after what happened last season, where she rallied all the other Cali class ships to come to the rescue of the Cerritos. But I think at the same time, yeah, I mean, clearly we didn't realize that Mariner had a history with Nick Carino or any of the other cadets from the episode First Duty. It does make me wonder. I mean, we're going into the predictions here a little bit. Is Wesley Crusher going to show up? You know, I don't know. Well, he didn't show up in Picard, so in the last episode of Picard, so it's hard to say. But
I was disappointed we didn't get to see Beverly Crusher.
Yeah, I was disappointed about that too. That they mentioned Beverly Crusher, but that does lead me into something else I wanted to bring up, Chris. So the other night I'm talking with my friend about this, about the timeline of what's going on here, and how where is everything lining up? Okay, so First Contact. I mean, sorry, not First Contact. Lower Decks starts a year after the events of Star Trek Nemesis. Okay, which was the final movie for the Next Generation crew. Okay, so that starts in 2380. So, and Picard starts in 2399. So at this point, and also in one other key event in 2380, 85 or 87, I forget which one it is, the Romulan Homestar is going to go supernova. So clearly that has not happened yet. And so Spock Prime is still in this universe. He hasn't gone to the Kelvin timeline. And so when they mentioned Beverly Crusher, that she left Starfleet, so she's already broken up with Picard and she is pregnant with Jack, or has just had Jack. So that's all going on right now. And so I'm just finding that part very interesting, that, we noticed that. I just wanted to bring that to people's attention that, hey, all these events that we saw play out in Picard are, and also in the Calvin timeline movies, are coming to fruition. So that's, although clearly the Romulans have found out that their star is about to explode. That's why, you've got this whole thing where the Romulans are still scheming against the Federation and each other. And it's like they haven't started devoting their resources to saving their people and stuff like that. Sorry, Chris, go on ahead.
I was just going to say, what's fascinating about the character of Nick is that it goes so far outside of what, was traditionally considered the Roddenberry box, which was like, Starfleet officers are uncorruptible. No, I think we're going to see that this guy was expelled, became disillusioned, and, he has become very bitter. So he has turned against the Federation and is trying to do some major damage. So I kind of like this, that we see a former Federation officer, saying, no, you know what, screw him. They screwed me. I'm going to screw him back harder. So I love how we've moved beyond, like, the Roddenberry era to, not everyone in Starfleet is perfect. I mean, some people can be turned. And I think we're going to see in this final episode that he's very bitter and very turned, and, like, he wants revenge.
That's interesting. I've never heard that the Roddenberry box for Starfleet officers are incorruptible, because Gene did write an episode of the original series called The Omega Glory, in which a Starfleet captain, thinking that he had discovered the secret immortality, basically goes rogue and violates the Prime Directive and all this other stuff, and abandons his crew to die.
And
it's not a very good episode, but yeah,
Roddenberry had some silly rules, like, no zippers. I mean, no pockets, no zippers. I mean, it's only after he died, and we see in season 4 that Picard gets his jacket. I mean, he had some silly rules.
Yeah, well, I think someday you and I have to do a thing where we kind of talk about the ups and downs of both Gene Roddenberry and George Lucas. And, like, okay, they both were geniuses. They both had these visions for their sci-fi universes. But sometimes you needed other people to kind of come in and tell the genius and refine the genius a little bit, so it make it a little bit more plausible. So it wasn't so far out there that nobody could understand it. And I think that, I think Gene had this wonderful vision of the future in which humanity got its act together and didn't destroy itself and went out and formed this great interstellar, civilization called the Federation, with the Vulcans and all these other races, because they realized that, hey, they needed to work together, because space is this big thing and they all want to know what's out there. So
I'm hesitant to put Roddenberry on too large of a statue, because beware idols who have feet of clay. I mean, definitely a visionary, but just because you're visionary doesn't mean that you don't have some issues.
Yeah, I think, it's sorry, I'm just having a little trouble hearing you, everything you said, but, certain things just, because especially when you're writing a TV show, like in 1987 when Next Generation came out, it's like, okay, it's one thing to say that, well, in the future, you're not going to have a lot of these gender norms, so it's going to be perfectly acceptable for men to wear mini skirts. Okay, that might be sometime in the future, but that's not something that's going to translate that well in 1987. But it's just sometimes showing that, Gene was probably way ahead of his time. But you and I have been to, many conventions where we've seen men wearing that duty style of uniform, the, male skirt and everything. And, it's kind of cool that there are people that feel like that's a cool thing. That's the way to go. But, I'm just saying that there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's translating that in 1987. Today, you could probably do that, but the episode would probably get banned in Florida. Yeah.
Perhaps Arizona. So, what do we think are some of our predictions for the final episode?
It's really hard to make predictions because all the predictions I think we had at the beginning of the year that, is that ship to do with Peanut Hamper or Agamas or Banji? No, and it turns out it's not an AI. It's this character we thought we'd seen the last of many years ago who has come back. So it's hard for me to make predictions, but I'm going to say that Mariner's going to save the day and stop Carino from doing what it is he's going to do. I think that's kind of a safe bet at this point, but just how she's going to do it's going to be hard to say. What do you got first, Chris?
Sito is alive. We're going to find that out at the very end of the episode. That Sito is alive.
That would be a really nice way to end it. Yeah, that maybe she's alive. Maybe she and that Cardassian she was teamed up with, maybe they found some hidden planet somewhere between Bajoran and Cardassian space, and they've been hiding out for decades and missed the Dominion War and everything. That would be quite.
I think what's going to be is that at the very end, after I agree with you, she stops Locarno, and he's going to give her a piece of information saying, like, you need to know she's a prisoner in Cardassian, she's alive. And that's going to be, like, how we're going to end the season.
Yeah. Well, they also mentioned Thomas Riker, remember? When they were talking about people they were trying to find. So, who knows? Maybe Thomas Riker escaped it. It's going to be interesting to see. I've gotten to the point I just don't, making predictions. I, really know what should, for example, don't bet on any football team I tell you to bet on. Except Tennessee. I'm sure Tennessee will do fine.
We're going to cross Kentucky.
Yes.
You will hear on the wind the lamentations of the men, women, and children after we have crushed them today at our game at 7 p.m. CBS or ESPN.
Yes. So I want to get in a little bit of Star Trek news here before we wrap things up. Mike McManus, our wonderful showrunner and producer for Lower Decks, did an interview with TrekWire this week, and TrekMovie.com this week, in which he indicated that he was trying to clarify his remarks from a couple weeks ago when he said that he was quoted as saying that he thought season 5 of Lower Decks would be the final one. He said that they're not writing season 5 as a series finale. There's no indication that Paramount is going to end it after season 5, which for those of us who are in love with Lower Decks, that's a great thing. He also indicated that, there is a big story arc here for Mariner. We just haven't seen everything. They are apparently, there is a plan in the works to bring back cast members of Star Trek Enterprise to appear on Lower Decks at some point, but because of the actor strike, they have not been able to negotiate with anybody over that. So once that is resolved, I'm sure they're going to sit down with Scott Bakula and Connor Trinneer and everybody from Enterprise and try to see if we can get the old gang back together for I don't know if it will be another live action animation crossover like what we had this past year with Strange New Worlds, but fingers crossed that we're gonna because Chris, I'm just gonna say it. We've got faith of the heart.
This unfortunately we disagree because I do not see the need to see Enterprise ever again.
Yes.
Now, I will, in the vein of Star Trek news, Isa Brions, who was in Star Trek Picard for the first 2 seasons and before they dumped everyone for the Next Generation crew, is on the series Goosebumps, which you can view on Hulu and Disney. So
Yes.
you can see her there, and then other than that, oh yeah. So I guess we should let people know, Josh, that Farpoint officially announced this morning that they have a new home.
Oh, they officially announced?
They officially announced they have a new home. It's at the Doubletree in Pikesville, Maryland, which is just northwest of Baltimore. So,
okay. So everybody should start making their reservations accordingly.
yes,
The
it
Doubletree
is.
Okay, well, we're going to try to get that information up as soon as possible. Okay, well, I'm going to let my friends know, and we'll let everybody we know. Okay, well, that's good. And I got one last piece. All 5 issues of the Star Trek Next Generation comic book miniseries Halloween are available in comic book stores. For those who don't know, Halloween concerns the character of Red Jack, who was a villain from the original series, who basically was a psychic alien that was responsible for that fed off of fear, and apparently was responsible for the Jack the Ripper killings in an episode that was written called Wolf in the Fold, that was written by the legendary writer Robert Bloch, who of course is best known for Psycho and among other things. And Red Jack in this manages to get aboard the Enterprise D, takes over the holodeck, and launches a wave of fear throughout the ship. And our crew must find a way to stop him before the Enterprise D is destroyed. So check that out at your local comic store from IDW. But that does not type your wonderful information about the Doubletree Hotel. I will proceed to make my arrangements accordingly. And that is great news. Hopefully, Shore Leave will also be going there. So everyone should look that up. Thank you for letting us know that, Chris. So, but I think, sorry,
It's
go ahead.
about 15 minutes in closer.
Yeah.
It's not as far out as Huntsville.
Yeah, Pikesville is rough between Hunt Valley and Timonium. And there is a certain restaurant that you and I and our friends rather enjoy going to. So it's nice to know we'll still get to keep going there while we're there. Well, maybe you don't like that one as much as Bob.
No, I do like the restaurant, but I think Pikesville is in the opposite direction where you're thinking. People will look at it on a map.
We'll look at it later. But anyway, so I think that's everything we got. So we will get back together again next week and for the season finale of Lower Decks. Until then, I am Josh Pritchett.
And I am Chris Pavone. You can find me on Verde Cosplay on Instagram. Until then, happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween. Bye-bye.